everyone has a certain level of understanding, but because it's not talked about, everyone has slightly different versions of the truth, and a lot of people are wrong. Loud clanging noises in the background, it's my pipes.
Okay.
It does that when they heat up, and it's terrifying.
I get that.
Do you have a tagline today?
I do, and it's going to be relevant, but you're not going to know until I tell you my topic.
Well, that's the idea, isn't it?
Hello, friends.
Hello, friends.
And welcome to Pickles and Vodka, the mental health podcast where sometimes history repeats itself. I am one of your co-hosts, Lauren.
And I'm your other co-host, Christina.
We did that flawless.
And we had to bring it up.
Of course. We always do.
Oh my god, don't shout. You're a professional.
Sorry, I am home again, so I wondered if I would have to, mess with some levels a little bit.
Oh, you sounded better.
Okay.
When you were closer, you just shouted and the levels went way up.
Yeah, they weren't doing that with the other one, though, I noticed.
It's better in the basement.
I know. It's better with the gamer headphones.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
You need to move the Pickles and Vodka studio over there. Just, slowly move in one piece of equipment at a time.
Yes. Every weekend I'll bring one thing and be like, you haven't noticed I'm moving in.
But only into the basement and only my podcasting
and only my podcast.
Stuff.
Yeah, sorry.
And that's how we get a rent-free facility.
Yep.
Oh, I love it.
All right. Well, I feel like maybe I should ask first then. Where are you at?
Man, you're not even going to tease the topic?
No.
Lauren's picking a topic today.
Yeah, okay. So I struggled with picking a topic so much. And of course, kind of the last second, then I had one and I was, taking notes on it. I was like, I think I actually really like this one, even though it's ambiguous. But at the very last second, I know I came up with another topic. I was like, that would be great, but I have no time. And also on my drive home, I forgot what it was. So we're sticking with this one.
You texted me at almost 11 a.m. of recording day saying, okay, I think I have something. It's less of a general topic and more like leading to sharing stories, but I think it'll be fun. And by fun, I mean awkward, uncomfortable, and potentially painful.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm excited.
All right.
Thank you for that tease.
Mm-hmm.
So where am I at? I'm going to pull a Lauren and talk about the weather. We got hit with so much snow, over a foot.
Yeah.
Which is wild because I live in coastal Virginia. And it was it shouldn't have been that bad because I didn't have to go anywhere. My PHP was virtual for a few days.
Okay.
And I had groceries. So I literally didn't leave that apartment for 3 days. And I got so fucking depressed.
Mm-hmm.
And I started vaping THC again.
Okay.
Which, not to give myself an excuse, but it was an accident.
Oh.
A friend gave it to me and I didn't realize it had THC, and so I took it. And then I immediately realized, but then, what was I going to do? Throw it away?
Yeah.
So
I mean, you could have stopped.
Yeah.
Until later, whatever.
I keep thinking, man, I should take it to a friend's house and leave it with them. But I conveniently keep forgetting. So yeah, I mean, I kind of fessed up this week in PHP that I had been I went 2.5 weeks without any cannabis products, and so whatever, the world is going to shit. I need something. I haven't touched Benadryl, so
well, that's good.
Yeah,
because honestly, I'm way more concerned about that one than you doing THC. That doesn't scare me.
Yeah, like I said, this group is kind of rubbing off on me in good ways and not so good ways, but in any case, it's ending soon. I'll be done after this week, hopefully.
Okay.
But yeah, my mood has been really low, and part of that is the shame of vaping. I didn't even want to bring it up on this podcast because I'm so ashamed of it. I told everyone that I was going to quit smoking for the duration of this program, and technically that's true. Well, it was true. That's the thing. I see now why the program is abstinence, because once I started with that one vape, it was oh, okay, I'm going right back to hitting it all day. And and then I'm too aware of what I'm doing and what's going through my head that the stuff that I should be in group to absorb is just going completely over my head.
Yeah.
And I told the counselor today, and he was like, that is some self-sabotage. I was like, yeah, like,
Yeah.
I'm an expert. I told you didn't believe me. Yeah, it sucks. But I don't know. I'm proud of myself for not dropping out.
Yeah, that's a big one too. Because I know it's easy to also, yeah, just be like, well, I set this goal for myself and I didn't make it. And so why am I even here?
Yeah. And Medicaid is gonna get cut soon, and that's bumming me out because
Yeah,
I was just with a friend talking about it, and I was joking, like, it was nice to have health insurance for a year,
right.
back to the old way of living.
Ugh.
But when I think about it, it makes me want to cry.
No, I hate that for you so much.
Yeah, so that's fun. Where are you at?
Well, not as quite as bad as that, because I hadn't thought of that Medicaid piece, and I was just like, God, I would just be despondent. Like, not.
Yeah, do I sound despondent?
I mean, you did when you talked about it, but
Yeah. Anyway.
um, I think that I have been feeling mad imposter syndrome the past week. I mean, it's probably just all of like the same stuff that I talk about like stressing me out, but I just like that's really what I'm naming it as this week, where it's like work, where I go and feel like they think like everyone else is more important to our company here, and I feel like no one sees what I do, and they're just kind of like, yeah, it'd be easy to replace her if she's gone. And just feeling like things that I used to think that I was good at or whatever, for some reason lately, just like feeling the opposite. There has been a lot of heated discussion in the band. It's
Well,
mainly one
wait.
guy.
I want to comment on the work piece first.
Okay.
When you were describing, like, oh, she's just another cog, it's easy to replace, I was thinking, I would honestly, at least in the past, there were times I would love to have that kind of job. I was thinking in my head, like, the image of you and your band, like, screaming into a mic popped up, and I was like, you are supposed to be a front woman. You are not supposed to be a cog. You need a job that does give you that recognition. Like, because I don't necessarily think it's the fault of the job. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think any accountant at any insurance firm, like, well, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But you get the
Well,
idea.
yeah. What's funny is I've had those feelings too, I know. Like once you said that, I was like, oh yeah, I've definitely had times when I've been extra stressed, or I know looking back, I'm like probably when I've had a lot of like extra ADHD stuff popping up, because then it always seemed easy. Like if I had a job where I just had to go in and do one thing and I knew the work was endless and I just had to do it all day as fast as I could sit there and just zone out and do the same thing over and over. But since I have to like switch from one thing to another, then that's where it gets so hard sometimes. As like, I was working on this and then you asked me a question and now it's going to take me an hour to switch my brain.
Well, especially with your possibly ADHD brain.
Exactly.
Like, it's not a good environment for you. And I don't know, when I met you, I didn't really see you as that, like, front woman that I just described. And I think that's kind of the image you project. But you really love and deserve the spotlight. And I think you have imposter syndrome about that. Am I wrong?
That makes a lot of sense. No, you are kind of blowing my mind.
And I think you need to, like, embrace. I'm not saying like change careers overnight, but maybe just like find ways to put yourself in the spotlight more in everyday life. As cheesy as that sounds,
Yeah,
like, I don't
and
know.
maybe even, it is time to like force myself, kick myself in the butt, say at least like see what's out there for another job. Like I don't have to, yeah, I don't
Exactly.
have to say like, oh, I need to find something else and I need to find it within a month. Just say like, just look. So that is the main thing, though I will say it has been nice the last couple weeks, because we've talked in the past about my new like higher level aerial class. And in the past
Yes.
couple of weeks, because I started that class probably feeling a lot of imposter syndrome, I felt like I was clearly worse than everyone. I was probably holding them back and they might be resenting me for it. And in the last couple classes, it's like I've been able to connect and have a little more conversations with people. And I've had some moments, where our instructor has said, like, I'm teaching you guys a pretty advanced move for this class, and like I've gotten it, but not even everyone has. So it's felt like, oh,
Amazing.
wow, I might belong here.
You do. And that's another area of your life where you do take the spotlight. Like, I don't know a lot of people that would feel confident enough to do that, even in a class setting. I mean, all that to say, you need to keep embracing stuff like that, because you're doing a really good job. But
Oh,
like, I think that's your true self. at least in my eyes.
That was cool to hear because I'd never thought of it that way. I think because I've always been a quiet person too, but I came to the conclusion long ago. I was like, I'm quiet, but I am not shy.
Yeah,
They're not the same thing.
I totally agree.
All right. I don't really have anything else to say, and I would love if there was like some seamless way to go into my topic, but I don't think it's going to happen because we're so far left field.
That's okay. You gotta make your own segues, baby.
All right. So, what I ended up thinking is kind of something that we've talked about before because it's family related and we've done family
Okay.
episodes, but I had a very specific question or a very specific question with a lot of options.
Oh boy. Should I write it down?
No, because I'll repeat some of these.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we can just go in different directions. It's basically asking how your family reacted to the topic of mental health when you were growing up. I want to know what kind of like formed your opinions of it. And I wrote, how did your family, and not just your parents, respond to / view / portray / demonstrate mental health? And I already felt like we tend to go similar sometimes, but I was like, but knowing like your mom and your sister's history, I'm like, we could have different things. So I'm curious what you have to say.
Yeah, so it could have been worse. Like, I'll start off by saying that I had access to therapy in high school. I got the help I needed for the most part. I'm alive.
Yeah.
But for me, it was all about secrecy
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know, it wasn't something that was told to us. Like, if you're sad, hold it in. Like, there was none of that. It was just maybe specific to being the oldest daughter. I
Mm-hmm.
thought I had to be perfect, essentially. Like, I thought I had to be a good example. I see that a lot in my old journals. I write about being a good example and how I feel like everyone's watching me and I have to do everything right. And so I didn't really talk about my mental health, and neither did anyone else really. My middle brother, the one who now lives in Indiana,
Mm-hmm.
who has struggled with homelessness and addiction himself, he was the only one in our family who really acted out, and I put air quotes around that because, just expressing his emotions.
Because there's also acting out but being quiet about it, which
Which I did,
I'm
but
sure
no
we both
one
did.
cared
Yes.
about. Yeah. And he got punished for it. He was othered and disciplined and turned into an example just for, like I said, expressing emotion, like expressing undesirable emotions like anger. We were talking about that in PHP the other day about anger and how difficult it is for me to feel it without guilt. Like, it still hasn't set in that it's a healthy, normal emotion.
Oh, yeah. I feel like this maybe came up on a much earlier episode where my first time in treatment and my brother was actually able to come for a therapy session with me. And the therapist I had there, like she'd already been working with me about like how my family didn't express anger. And so
Mhm.
she's getting to meet him, like another person that grew up with my parents. And she was just like, so how do you remember your family showing anger? Like, I'm just curious. And my brother just burst out laughing. And that's when, and then he like pulled back a minute and he's like, I'm sorry. It's just when you asked that, I realized like we didn't.
Well, there was plenty of anger in my household, but it was mostly my dad. And to his credit, like, he went to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
He got diagnosed. He got medicated. Like, he did all that work.
Okay.
And he was always the one that, would get me into therapy or treatment or whatever. But yeah, my mom was struggling in secret as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was the only one that was really aware of it. And even then, I didn't really know what was going on. But I had this feeling like I wasn't supposed to talk about it. It was like understood between us.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering as you were saying that. Like, how did it feel being like the one keeping your mom's secret?
Well, and also, like I said, I was kind of in the dark myself. I didn't really know the signs. I didn't have the language for what I was seeing. Like, I was in no place to empathize with her.
Okay.
For sure. And yeah, I mean, the way that they dealt with it was just she went to detox for a while and it was all hush hush. And
Right.
like my brother, they sent him to another state to go to school and live with my aunt and uncle. Like, it's all about appearances.
Yeah, so it's kind of, like send them away so they can hide their shame while they take care of it.
I don't know. I just know that I've always been afraid to talk about mental health. I don't know.
I mean, I'm there with you, obviously, because my parents not only didn't talk about it, I feel like my dad purposefully took a very, like, simple view of it. As far as my dad got, is he graduated high school, but that doesn't mean, like, that he is not smart, not a good businessman. He's run his own business for, like, 20 plus years.
Yeah, same with my mom.
Yeah. But I feel like in the topic of mental health that he kind of like gave himself an out and hid behind that. It's just like, well, I'm just simple and I don't understand this kind of stuff. That's, your brain being crazy and I didn't learn that kind of stuff growing up. And that he just sort of removed himself from it then.
Yeah, it's like you're capable of learning new things about yourself. Just because you were born in a certain year doesn't exclude you from like self-discovery
Right.
and growth.
And, even after, because it took, like, the first time that my parents got me therapy is when I was like 19, 20. And that's when I started having like the day long panic attacks that I didn't know what
Mhm.
they were. And then later having to admit to them, like, all these past years of eating disorder behavior. And I just feel like, even to this day, they really make it diminutive, was my word, because
Mhm.
I can think of like all the times that those things are referred to as your thing. It's just like, oh,
Yeah.
how's that anxiety thing? Or my dad asks, like, how's the eating stuff? And it's
Mm.
just like, oh. And you can tell they're very uncomfortable and they don't even want to ask. So,
And you don't want to tell. I mean,
yeah.
obviously, you've spoken about it on the podcast a lot, how you don't tell them about the podcast, you don't talk to them about your hospitalization.
Even when it's out in the open, then it's still just kind of like, oh, okay. But it's not really for polite discussion. We just know that this is a thing that happened.
Yeah, I mean, was it you? I did that episode about family secrets. Yeah, we did it after meeting in person.
Okay.
Our first episode back from St. Louis was all about family secrets. And I know we talked a lot then about the fact that no one wants to say things, even when they're obvious, especially in a tight knit family like mine. Like, everyone knows.
Yeah.
The fact that you're not talking about it almost makes it worse because, like, everyone has a certain level of understanding. But because it's not talked about, everyone has slightly different versions of the truth. And a lot of people are wrong, if that makes sense.
And I think, like, thinking about this today, what we didn't, like, go into before that really struck me is thinking, like, how even taking this out into my extended family. I remember finding out in maybe, like, my first year of college, like, I had a bunch of girl cousins that were 4 years younger than me, but we still were pretty close because I didn't have any others close to my age. And I remember, like, hearing from one of them. I think I was struggling with something and I admitted to her and she's just like, so just so you know, last year I got super depressed in high school. Like also started engaging in like bulimic behavior and was like cutting and had suicide ideation and all this stuff. And so she went away to a hospital for, I don't know, like a couple months. And nobody in my family knew. Like, this is the first I knew. It was like a year later. And like this whole family is fairly close.
That's wild. I mean, you literally did talk about the cousin
Well, I might have
in that
talked
family
about the other
but
one. I feel like I
oh, there's multiple?
Yeah, because I was gonna say I feel like I talked about the other one
Oh, fuck.
who like for years had a raging eating disorder that I was fully aware of. Yeah, because I,
Yeah.
do too. And so I can see that. Like, she wasn't fooling me, but yeah, like I never heard from the family. I heard from her, like, that's when I went to treatment. She finally wrote to me and was like, yeah, so I feel like I should admit this. Like, I can't believe you're doing this. I wish I had that bravery.
Like we talked about a little last week, it's easier to admit once the wounds become scars.
Uh-huh.
Once you're on the other side, of course, it's easier to talk about. But when you're in it, people don't know what to say. Like, they don't want to enable you, but they don't want to, like, pretend it's not happening. And then, I don't know, I felt like this too.
Yeah, and just like knowing like how close this family is tells me that like I don't think anyone was telling anyone. Like, my mom grew up with all these sisters that were really close. And I feel like at that age, she probably would have shared this kind of stuff with me if she knew it was happening. But this tells me that like all of my aunts and uncles were keeping like their children's problem a secret as well. They all like had this collective like we don't talk about these things. And I don't know if no one wanted to be first.
Yeah, I mean, that truly is the situation sometimes. And that's one reason I'm really proud of myself for talking about this, like for being the first one in my family, at least, because I want it to be easier. Well, again, thinking that I'm this example to my siblings, I'm not. They're like their own independent people.
But when you were younger, I mean, I'm sure you were at some point.
I always wrote about my feelings. That's the thing. Like, I've always had writing as an outlet. And when I had the internet, there were internet friends. But, like, my family, to their credit, is getting a lot better. Like, just last year, my uncle came out as having alcoholism and getting treatment and being sober. And it was really cool. And I just wish more people would do that.
Yeah, the examples I've been giving are all on my mom's side. But on my dad's side, it's the same thing. It's just kind of, I mean, I've always said, and I'm always, like, half joking, but I'm also pretty serious, that like my dad and his brother and all his sisters, I'm like, they're all some level of alcoholic. And you can just tell in family functions.
It's what's normalized.
Yeah, but I didn't know for the longest time that his oldest sister had actually been sober for like a really long time. So I was like, oh wow, I didn't know anyone actually admitted it. And you still never talk about it, but somebody apparently did because she has always stayed sober.
It's like that one relative that you see maybe once every 5 years and you really desperately want to hear their story, but you never get the chance.
I mean, she was at everything. Like I said, I just don't think I noticed because there's so many loud people at a family function and there's so much free-flowing alcohol. I didn't notice she wasn't drinking.
That's fair.
But it was just wild to me to like learn so much later that I was just like, oh, she's been sober like practically since I've been born, probably. I was like, I didn't know that one of you had managed to. Good job. But I still feel like, I don't know if because they are all like such in denial about it, I'm like, would it harsh their buzz if they have to like actually talk about it? Or do they just, like sit around and just ignore the fact like, yeah, she's not drinking alcohol with us?
Well, I think it's some of that, but I also think it's sort of like religion, which is what I'm eventually going to talk about.
I was hoping so.
Yeah, I mean, it's like in my family, everyone was a Christian, and it's just assumed that it's just normalized. Like there would be a prayer at every meal, there would be a devotional, there would be sometimes we even sang hymns, like not just in my immediate family, but like extended family. It was just so normal, like for your family drinking.
Yeah.
No one even questioned it.
Yeah.
And, obviously it's not the same, but the stuff I went through was really damaging, which I guess I kind of been holding back because, like, it makes me so angry. Everything was tied up with faith, including mental health.
This is exactly what I wanted to hear about, if that helps.
I'm just trying to gather my thoughts because there's just so much. Basically, when you asked for help, it was always to God.
Right.
Like, if I was feeling anxious, I would go to my mom and she would pray with me. I've told this story before. It's like, I didn't go to my mom for my mom to help me. I went to her for God to help me. And anytime anyone talked about mental health, it was always in the form of like a prayer, like, help me take away this demon, help me be stronger for you. Like, I don't know. It was all very spiritual. In fact, in my old journals, I used the phrase spiritual warfare a lot, like in the context of my eating disorder. At the time when I was at my worst in like early 2010, I would pray every night with my dad. That, and like I said, I was seeing a therapist, but she was a Christian counselor.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's what they'd find for you, of course.
It was better than nothing. She was cool.
Yeah, I think you've talked about her.
Shout out Claire in Chicago, if you're listening. But yeah, it was all spiritual. We weren't taught that addiction could be genetic, or even eating disorders for that matter. Like whenever my mom would talk about her quote unquote sins, like her mental health struggles, let's say, in the past, it was always part of her testimony. Like, I got through this because I found the Lord, and now I could never go back to those old ways, and he saved me. And it's like mental health struggles are something you need to be saved from because that's part of your old sinful life.
Yeah, while you were talking, it just really struck me that I'm just like, that is actually a huge difference, that a kid goes to their parents saying like, I'm, having a problem and I'm struggling with this, instead of them saying like, I will help you. They say like, I will help God turn this around for you.
Yeah, and, like, when it came to physical things, like, Dad, help me paint my Pinewood Derby, or Mom, like, help me make this cake. It's like, they were great with that kinda stuff, but when it came to anything, like, mental health related
Yeah.
and and my dad is, like, a trained counselor too, like, he was a pastor, so he had to learn a lot of stuff. So, I don't know.
Well, it's interesting to me too because I feel like this is like the path that my mom is turning to.
Oh, no, what do you mean?
Just this is like a thing that in the past few years has been more of a frustration when I talk to her. And, it could be something as simple as like I tell her, like, I want to buy a condo when my lease is up. And she's like, oh, good. I will say prayers that God will give you the right place. And I'm just like, or I'll just look and find somewhere.
I was gonna say, "Or give me money."
Well, she did do that too.
Well, and I don't
But
mind the prayers so much. Like, I used to get really angry when someone said they were praying for me, and now I'm just like, "Okay, you're sending me good thoughts.
yeah, I mean, I don't
It's sweet."
I don't mind that in some instances, like you said, if someone like if that's their lifestyle and you say I'm going through something and they're just like, I'll pray for you. I'm like, well, thank you, move on. But the way that my mom discusses it more, I feel like how you were talking, that it's just like, I'll ask God to help you. God will find a way to do it. And I'm just like, that's
Yeah,
not what I needed.
and afterward, like, all the glory goes to God too.
Exactly. Mhm.
Now to this day, I have all of this, like, scientific knowledge about how my brain works and why I am the way I am, and yet I still feel like such a bad person who doesn't deserve anything because mental health is an indicator of your, like, value or your morality.
Yeah, I mean, you said right from the beginning, and I don't think more educated people don't take it as literally, but what you said in the beginning, like at the most simplest, people are just like, those are the demons in you.
Well, and I'm not even talking about disorders, which contrary to popular belief, I didn't always have. Even just normal mental health stuff like puberty, like
Yeah.
your brain changes during puberty, you have questions about sex, like that was sinful. We couldn't ask questions about that
Mhm.
or talk about it like, yeah, if I touched myself, I was like
Oh
sinning.
yeah, we've talked about that a
We've
few
talked about
times.
that
Yeah.
on the sex
The
episode.
sex episode, yes.
I hate it. I hate that. That's a thing. But yeah, everything was spiritual warfare. Every normal little thing.
Mhm.
And I'm still even just like coming to terms with it, let alone recovering from it, you know?
Yeah, like it's hard enough when you're dealing with like mental health things to accept yourself as you are, but when you're kind of being told that it's like, and these are your faults and we're going to help you get rid of them.
Well, and now it's almost the opposite where I cling to them so desperately because almost like an act of defiance, like I'm going to embrace this like evil side of myself, like this flawed, sinful part of myself and reclaim it.
Mhm.
It's like if I'm going to hell, I'm going to go to hell in style, you
Yeah,
know?
I'm going to go on my own terms.
Exactly, but there comes a time when I need to let it go and I can't, and so it kind of backfires.
So I may have mentioned that my family did something for like several years where my grandparents would buy all of, like their children, my mom and her siblings, and the grandchildren a weekend in a hotel near Christmas.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool. I always thought, that's our kind of family Christmas. And one year when we did that, then it's when I was living with the terrible ex who I talk about frequently,
Mhm.
and we had like some argument where he was just like making me feel like shit about myself, of course, and make me feel like it's my fault if I would get angry about it with him, especially I've also talked about, like once I got the borderline diagnosis, then he got to just be like, that's just because you're borderline. Like,
Mhm.
I'm never wrong.
How
Yeah,
convenient.
it's just your thing. So I was like trying not to like have a fight in the car and get really upset or anything like that. So like the only way that I could not do that is I just dug my fingernails into the back of my other hand so much that they drew blood, and like did that like on both hands, just like mashed them in pretty much so that I would not scream. And so by the time Christmas came around, they were still healing. They looked pretty bad. And I remember like my cousin, who is probably closest in age to me, 2 years younger, and he's a guy and also grew up in this family. So I feel like especially like not going to be one to talk about these kind of things, but he was the person that noticed, he saw, he was like, oh shit, like what happened to your hands? And I just gave something real quick because that boyfriend was in a band. I think I said, I was like, oh, I was moving band equipment and scraped against something. And I could see he's just kind of like not really buying that. And, at one point he was like, seriously, it looks like you got attacked by a dog. I was just like, no, it's nothing, whatever. And then, of course, later, then the boyfriend got mad at me because he was just like glaring at me after that, like, you don't take care of her. And I was like, whatever.
It's all about him.
That's your hang up. But it was just like interesting to look back and be like, realize like, oh, sometimes, my generation, we did see each other. We just had heard from the generation before us and the one before that to shut up. So we had to be almost like secretive about it. And that makes sense with my other cousins, like messaging me separately, being like, hey, so I haven't told anyone, but this happened.
That's true. I think despite my upbringing, like I did become more open about mental health way earlier than you, because of the internet.
Yeah.
In huge part. And I think millennials are pretty good at talking about their mental health now.
Yeah, like thinking about all that stuff kind of gave me hope because I, was feeling discouraged about how my parents and their siblings came at it all and everything. And I knew that came down, even harder from their parents, and realizing like me and my cousins almost had this little like secret society where we're like, we're told we're not supposed to talk about this, but we're going to whisper about it to each other occasionally. And that just makes me feel like that's progress. And I know most of them have children. So I'm like, I hope they're really open with their children.
Well, yeah, that's like hopefully the idea that each generation does slightly better than the previous one. Like all the millennials I know, myself included, are damaged children. Like psychologically, we're all damaged children. And Gen Z, on the other hand, from my perspective, seems to be like the spoiled, happy little kid.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so ageist of me.
I was just gonna say, I was gonna let you say it because I feel like since I'm sort of, like Gen X, maybe on the verge of a millennial, so I'm even almost like two generations behind. I feel like I can't give Gen Z shit because I'll just be like, whatever, old person, you don't get it.
But they're full of themselves and they're not sorry about it.
Yeah, they're not afraid to say it.
Yeah.
Which in some ways is refreshing.
Yeah, and they're like totally confident. They're teaching me things I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I just love it.
I mean, the younger millennials already did that for me. So yeah, I agree. Each generation is getting better about that.
I mean, I have a journal entry I could read about spiritual warfare.
Love it.
Let me see. Oh, okay. This one is from my freshman year of college at ORU. So this is 20th February 2011. I just ate a heap of food for dinner. My stomach isn't used to holding such large amounts and is screaming in protest. Purge it all, the enemy whispers. And that's enemy with a capital E.
Oh boy.
Get that poison out. But I'm not going to. I want to stop and be serious about it. I'm at campus worship, and a woman just walked over and sat down next to me right as I finished writing that last paragraph. She said she had to talk to me and asked what was going on. Obviously, I was a bit weirded out and didn't say much, but she wasn't discouraged and kept pushing me. She asked if I had been dealing with depression and inner struggles, and I said, yes, I had struggled with those things in the past. She then began to pray with me, stroking my back and hair, urging me to give up whatever it was I was withholding from God. Something about the encounter just impacted me, I guess. As strange as it was as though Jesus had come up to me and reassured me that I was on the right path. Who knows?
I had a couple main thoughts about that.
Please. I don't get to tell these stories often.
First of all, I mean, you described so well what you had been talking about, that, it's like everything is God's intervention. And as I'm listening to that, what I'm thinking is, I'm like, I know that like people could turn it to that. But what it made me think of is how people talk about like the rule of threes, like celebrities die in threes. And the thing is, I kind of like realized years ago, I'm like, that's based on your definition of celebrity. Like people always bring it up when like three people that they really knew, they're like, see, it always happens in threes. These three people died like in quick succession. But, if I looked at the news, I could be like, and that person who was pretty major celebrity and that person who was pretty major in their field. And yeah, So I feel like
Yeah.
it's what you want to see. And the other main thing that I thought is, that it sounds like in your journal entry you did go for, it's like, oh my gosh, it's this divine intervention. And I was just like, maybe you just looked really fucking depressed. And that's why.
Maybe people prey on people like me and they don't even have to say much. Like, I've had several encounters like that over the years when I was a believer. Like, I wrote about them, how I felt like they were speaking directly to me and my situation. But when I read back, it was just really basic stuff. Like, she said, do you have inner struggles?
Right.
Like, no shit, I have everyone has inner struggles. Like,
Yeah.
it's confirmation bias.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to think of. But yeah, there's just so much like that. Like in another entry, I say, remove the poison from my veins and replace it with your spirit. Like, I yearn for your light. Without it, I feel like I'm groping in the dark, placing my hands on all the wrong things. Again, there's like right or wrong. And I mean, I could find so many entries like this.
Oh, I'm sure.
But yeah, even now that I don't believe anymore, I still feel like wrong.
Yeah, like that's a just basic innate feeling that you learn that's hard to turn around. I feel like other than just saying like, "Oh, well, I just don't believe in this anymore." So now I don't feel like I'm made wrong. Like it's harder to just turn that around than just to say that.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, our family does talk about it more now. My mom and I have many conversations about mental health.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're more educated now.
My family probably talks about it less.
Yeah, I mean, having openly mentally ill kids will do that to you also.
Maybe I can make this like a little like goal of mine when I have a chance. Because the thing that I do wish I had done more is I have an easier time being open with my brother, but also like, no, he gets really involved with his family and then, like doesn't really seem to have like the extra time for us to have these kind of conversations. But I guess if anything, what I should probably do is I should at least start by reaching out more often, just being like, let's
Yeah.
talk on the phone once a month or something,
Yeah, that's a good idea to have like a set day.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking like it doesn't necessarily have to start with that. It doesn't have to be like, hey, brother, do you want to know all of the mental health shit that I've gone through since we last had a conversation about that? Probably, I don't know, 6 to 8 years ago. But if I just say like, let's just start talking more.
That's so true. I need to hear that as well. It's something that I'm notoriously bad at doing, especially when I'm struggling myself. That's why I love voice messages so much, because they're less pressure than a phone call and it feels more personal. Like
Yeah.
I feel like it's a good way to go deeper if you're not used to talking about this stuff with your family members and you don't want to just, like you said, jump in the deep end right away. Or send memes to break the ice.
True.
Honestly.
Yeah.
There's so many good mental health memes out there.
Yep.
I'm dead serious.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
My brother did randomly send me something recently. What was it? Oh.
What?
He just sent me a message that says, I have a photo that's guaranteed to take 5 to 7 years off Dad's life. And I'm waiting. I'm like, oh boy, what's coming? And it is my niece who's going to start college next year. And she is at the Department of Art History table talking to someone. I was like, yep.
No, that's a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
Like finding some common thing, and oftentimes it's jokes.
Yeah. And it's kind of like if that starts, then like someone sends something when we haven't sent things in over a month. And it's like that starts a conversation going and maybe that can lead to more. So yeah, that's my goal, is just to have us each talking.
I think that's a great goal.
Right.
What should the poll for this one be?
I feel like the poll kind of lends itself with its, just kind of like, how did your family view mental health?
And how does it affect you now?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yep.
Because, yeah, I feel like once I've had some time to really process this topic, I'll have more to add.
Yeah, I'm thinking so too. Like I said, I came up with it this morning, so I haven't had much more time.
Ooh, maybe I can do another covert recording with my mom and ask her a question with her consent.
Okay.
She's done it before, but yeah, I'll get her side of the story.
Maybe I'll try and have an actual phone conversation with my brother and we'll see what happens then.
Oh, yeah, we'll see what happens.
All right.
All right, we'll see you next time, y'all.
Yep.
You sounded so disappointed. Yep.
No, I love talking to you. It's the highlight of my week.
No, same, honestly.
Yeah. Like that's not even irony. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
If you like what you heard, tell a friend about the podcast. You can direct them to picklesandvodka.substack.com, where you can find our entire back catalog and links to all our social media. We love hearing from our listeners, so send us a voice message at speakpipe.com/picklesandvodka or DM us at Pickles and Vodka Podcast on Instagram. My personal account is at XtinaJumper, and Lauren is at Lauren3_AFH. We'll see you next week.